You tried to move forward, but no matter how far you go, your heart keeps looking back. Have you ever felt like you walked away, but something inside of you refused to let it be finished? You've tried to bury the feelings, distract yourself with everyday life, and convince your heart that it's done, but the ache won't leave. And deep down, you still wonder why it never truly ended. This isn't just emotional confusion. This is something deeper, something spiritual. God didn't let it end for a reason, and your soul knows it. It's not just a thought that comes and goes. It's the kind of feeling that sits with you when no one else understands. You start asking yourself questions you can't answer. Why do I still feel tied to them? Why do they keep coming to mind when I'm not even trying to think about them? Why does it feel like peace never followed the goodbye? You've tried reasoning it away, tried calling it nostalgia, weakness, or just memories resurfacing. But what if it's none of that? What if God blocked the ending because he still has something to say through it? What if the silence has purpose? What if the reason it didn't end is because God is still working, just not in a way you expected? Take a breath. Let this message meet you in the tension. This might be exactly what your heart's been needing to hear. God didn't let it end for a reason. One, every time you let go, God sends a reminder. My times are in your hand. Deliver me from the hand of my enemies and from those who persecute me. You've tried to let go in silence. You've whispered to God that you're done hoping. You even told yourself that moving on was the only option left. But every single time you try to settle into peace without them, something shows up that reminds you of what your heart hasn't forgotten. It's not just the memories you still carry. It's the moments you didn't expect, when their name pops up in a conversation, or when you hear a song that takes you back to a place your soul still recognizes. You weren't looking for these reminders, but they show up anyway, uninvited yet undeniable. You ask God why this keeps happening when you're sincerely trying to release it. But maybe the reminders aren't a sign of weakness. Maybe they're confirmation that it wasn't time to fully let go. You keep getting pulled into moments that only make sense between you and him. Moments that interrupt your effort to move forward by bringing pieces of what used to be directly back into view. They don't break you down, they just shake something awake in you. And every time they come, a strange peace follows, like God saying, "Not yet." If it was truly over, wouldn't God help you forget instead of bringing it back to the surface again? Wouldn't the memories fade, the feelings quiet, the thoughts grow distant? But they haven't. And not because you're stuck, but because God's timing is still at work. He's not using reminders to trap you. He's using them to prepare you for something that only makes sense later. This is not your imagination. It's a sign of divine, unfinished business. 2, God keeps using their absence to teach you something. And we know that all things work together for good to those who love God, to those who are the called according to his purpose. You didn't know how much you needed their absence until the silence began to shape you. When they left, or when God allowed space to form, you assumed it was the end. But instead of falling apart, you started to learn. You learned to talk to God more and rely less on someone else to hold your emotions together. You learned to reflect on your patterns, your heart, your purpose, and what love should and shouldn't feel like. This isn't the kind of growth that happens when everything is perfect. It's the kind that only happens when something valuable is missing. Their absence has turned into a mirror, and you've been forced to face the truth about who you are. You realize the relationship exposed wounds in you that needed healing. It wasn't just about them growing, it was about you becoming the version of yourself that you kept avoiding. And every day apart, God has been using that space like a classroom. He's been speaking softly, revealing hard things, and giving you grace to become stronger than you were. You're not healing in vain. You're healing on purpose. If it was really over, you wouldn't still be learning from what was left behind. God could have let it fade into nothing, but instead, he allowed it to linger in your development. That means it still holds value, even if it's not yet restored. He doesn't waste pain, and he doesn't allow distance unless it's doing something eternal in you. This time apart wasn't punishment. It was preparation, and that's exactly why he didn't let it end, because it was always meant to build you first. 3. Every ending conversation still feels incomplete. The end of a thing is better than its beginning. The patient in spirit is better than the proud in spirit. You've tried having the final talk. You've sat there, looked him in the eyes, and said things that felt strong in the moment. But the peace never followed those conversations. Instead of closure, you walked away with a deeper ache. Something was still left hanging, unspoken, unresolved, unfinished. And no matter how many times you tell yourself it's over, your heart doesn't believe it. You've ended other relationships and felt confident in the decision. You knew when something no longer served your spirit or aligned with your future. But this one doesn't give you that clean break. You can't explain why, but every so-called final moment still opens more questions than answers. You're not confused. You're just aware that something about this feels different. There's a spiritual hesitation you can't ignore. It feels like there's another page left to turn. If God wanted you to close the door completely, he would have brought a different kind of peace. But instead, he's allowed the tension to remain. And in that space, he's building your patience. He's teaching you that closure doesn't always come when you want it. Sometimes it comes when both hearts are fully ready. So maybe he didn't let it end because he's still preparing the right ending, one that carries clarity, not confusion. That's why your spirit keeps tugging. It knows what your logic is trying to forget. 4. You're both healing at the same time. But let patience have its perfect work, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking nothing. You've changed. You're no longer reacting the way you used to. You're more grounded, more aware, and more willing to grow. And even though you're not in communication with them like before, you can sense they're changing too. You can feel it in the way they move differently, even from a distance. The timing of your growth seems to mirror theirs. It's not a coincidence that both of your lives started shifting after the pause. God has a way of working on two hearts separately when he knows they still have something to share in the future. You may not know what they're praying about. You may not know the battles they're quietly fighting, but God does. And he's using this season to strengthen both of you in private so you can stand stronger together if and when he brings you back around. He didn't let it end because the old version of you both couldn't hold what he's building. He needed to let you become whole people before he allowed the relationship to have another chance. This space was never about abandonment, it was about restoration. And he's been watching both of your hearts evolve at the same time for a reason. That reason is tied to the fact that it's not over yet. 5. God spoke to you about their purpose in your life. God is not a man that he should lie, nor a son of man that he should repent. Has he said, and will he not do? Or has he spoken, and will he not make it good? You didn't ask for a sign. You weren't begging for a word. But in one quiet moment with God, he showed you something about them. Something you couldn't shake, even when it didn't make sense. You know it was him because you didn't manufacture the moment. It was spiritual, undeniable, and stamped into your memory. Since then, you've had your doubts. You've questioned if you misheard, misunderstood, or wanted it too badly. But deep down, you've never been able to completely doubt what God revealed. It wasn't just a wish or an emotional reaction. It was a knowing. And you've carried that knowing even in moments of silence, separation, and pain. When God speaks, he doesn't always bring fulfillment right away. Sometimes the wait is long. Sometimes it tests your faith and stretches your obedience. But he is not a liar. And what he showed you wasn't meant to tease you. It was meant to sustain you during the seasons where nothing makes sense. He didn't let it end because his word is still alive. And when he promises something, it doesn't fade just because time passes. It remains, waiting for the moment where faith and timing finally meet. There's a peace that comes when you stop trying to force what God has already placed his hand on. When he doesn't let something end, it's not to confuse you, it's to keep your heart open for what's still unfolding. No matter how tired or unsure you feel, he's not done working behind the scenes. Even in the silence, he's moving. Even in the pause, he's preparing. Trust the unfinished. God does everything with purpose. And if he didn't let it end, it's because the story still matters. If the content inspired you, please like, comment, and subscribe to Pure Inspirational. Be blessed.